Roy Nellsch was a long-haul truck driver who made his living traveling across the highways and byways of America. But behind the wheel of his truck, he harbored a dark and sinister secret. On May 22, 2019, a woman reported Roy to police officers after he had allegedly kidnapped her along the Interstate 24 Kentucky/Tennessee border. She had managed to escape his truck, and she told the officers the terrifying tale of how Roy had abducted her and held her captive. The police officers immediately launched an investigation and were able to track down Roy's truck. After a tense standoff, the sheriff was able to apprehend Roy and take him into custody. As the investigation unfolded, more and more details about Roy's dark past began to emerge. It turned out that he had been preying on innocent women for years, luring them into his truck, and then subjecting them to unspeakable acts of violence and terror. With the help of the victims who came forward, the police were able to build a strong case against Roy. He was charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. Abby Pimentel was a young mother of two beautiful kids who lived in the suburbs of Kentucky, Tennessee. On May 22, 2019, she was driving down Interstate 24 when her car battery went dead and her phone battery drained. It was a scorching hot day, and she felt helpless and vulnerable on the deserted highway. However, fate had something else in store for her that day. A large truck U-turned and pulled over, and a man with a rugged appearance and shifty eyes stepped out. Abby had been taught to never seek help from strangers, but she had no other option left as she was very desperate for help. The man asked her if she needed gas, and she nodded her head. Abby hesitated for a moment before getting into the truck, but the man reassured her that he would take her to the nearest gas station. She sat beside him, keeping her purse and belongings close, and hoped that everything would turn out fine. As the truck started moving, the driver started asking her strange and awkward questions. Abby could sense that something was off about him, but she didn't want to panic. The man, whose name was Roy Nellsch, asked if Abby was going his route, to which she replied in the negative that she had to go back home to take care of her kids. Roy didn't seem to like her response and made a cryptic statement that he might have to kidnap her. Abby thought it was a joke and smiled weakly, but she couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. When Roy pulled over and stopped the truck after much persuasion from Abby to let her alight from the truck, Abby thought he was going to let her out, so she reached for the door handle. But before she could open the door, Roy pointed a gun at her and told her that he was going to kidnap her and rape her. Abby's heart sank as she realized the gravity of the situation. She begged and pleaded with him, telling him that she had two kids who needed her and that she couldn't leave them alone. But Roy was relentless and forced her to go to the back of the truck. Abby's mind was racing as she tried to figure out a way to escape. She decided that she was not going to go down without a fight. She lunged at Roy, grabbing the gun and wrestling with him. The struggle continued, and Roy pushed her down as both of them were struggling for the gun. Abby later got hold of the gun and pulled the trigger. She was surprised that the bullet didn't go off. She tried it once again and pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. As she was deliberating on what to do next, Roy had gotten a bigger gun from the truck and hit her head with the gun. Blood gushed out of her head as he handcuffed her and took her back to the front seat. As Roy drove down the road, Abby knew that she had to come up with a plan to escape. She lay handcuffed on the seat, thinking about her kids and how much they needed her. She had to get out of this alive. She tried to free herself from the handcuffs, ripping her skin in the process, but it was worth it if it meant that she could escape. With one hand free, Abby searched for something to defend herself. She grabbed a blanket and threw it over Roy's head and used her other arm to choke him. She grabbed the steering wheel and started swerving the truck, hoping to get the attention of other drivers. Roy agreed to let her go if she stopped, and to Abby's surprise, he offered to unlock the remaining handcuff. Once she was free, Abby didn't waste a moment.
He stops the truck and put his foot on the brake, and I said, "You're gonna let me out right now." And he managed to get that handcuff off. I don't know how he got the blanket off his head. I don't remember that part. Like, everything happened so fast. I remember I jumped out of the semi. I had one shoe on, one shoe off, the other shoe's up in the semi, half a dress on because he ripped it.
She ran out of the truck, half-dressed, and with one shoe missing. She didn't look back and just ran as fast as she could. She eventually saw help as she went to the police station to report the incident and described the truck to the police. The police apprehended Roy Nellsch, and he was charged with kidnapping and attempted rape. As the sun set on May 22, 2019, the wheels of justice turned, and Roy Nellsch, a long-haul truck driver, found himself in hot water. His heinous crime had been exposed. He had kidnapped a woman whose car had broken down on the notorious Interstate 24 before she escaped and reported to the police station. Former Clarksville detective Dennis Hannibal spent 5 grueling hours interviewing Nellsch and was left with a sinking feeling. As he gazed into Nellsch's eyes, he couldn't help but feel that he was staring into the soul of a serial killer. The dark and twisted events that unfolded throughout the investigation left the entire team involved with a single chilling realization. Roy Nellsch embodied evil in its purest form.
Police say a truck driver picked up a woman near the Kentucky state line, told her he was going to rape her.
As the investigation progressed, the evidence against Nellsch grew more and more damning. He didn't deny that he had hit Abby Pimentel over the head with a gun and handcuffed her, claiming that he was just trying to contain her. He also admitted that she had thrown a blanket over his head while he was driving on the interstate. Nellsch claimed that he was the victim, alleging that Pimentel had threatened to accuse him of rape if he didn't give her money. But as Hannibal dug deeper, he began to have serious doubts about Nellsch's story. He wondered, why did Nellsch keep Pimentel handcuffed if he was just trying to take her to the police for medical attention? Then the police decided to search Nellsch's truck, which turned up a shocking array of evidence. 2 guns, knives, a bloody rope, a stun gun, sex toys, and a bloody bag of women's undergarments were all found inside. Nellsch admitted that he had picked up other women before, including prostitutes. But the most chilling piece of evidence was a ledger that listed the names, ages, locations, and descriptions of women. "I think the evidence suggests there were other victims," one of the lead investigators said in an interview.
He came across very, almost humbled, respectful.
Despite Nellsch's claims of innocence, Hannholz's suspicions continued to grow. "I don't think this is your first time with something like this," he told Nellsch, which he replied in the affirmative. Nellsch asked for a lawyer, ultimately refusing to take a lie detector test after Hannholz found loopholes in his story. Nellsch was later held captive and was later brought to face his charges in court. In the end, Nellsch was charged with kidnapping, possession of child pornography, and transportation of child pornography. Investigators found more than 10,000 images of child pornography on a laptop inside the truck. Nellsch remained in jail on kidnapping charges, attempted rape, and sexual assault. Roy Nellsch, the long-haul truck driver, met his end in a federal prison in March 2022. He died of pneumonia after a brief illness while awaiting trial on charges of kidnapping and attempted rape. The news of his passing was met with mixed reactions, as some people breathed a sigh of relief, while others wondered what else he could have revealed about his dark past. Nellsch's death was a surprise to many, as he had been in relatively good health when he was arrested. However, the investigation into Nellsch's crimes continued even after his death, as detectives searched for any leads that could shed light on the extent of his depravity. They combed through his truck and personal effects, looking for anything that could link him to other missing person cases or unsolved crimes. After escaping from Roy Nellsch's clutches, Abby Pimentel was left with a traumatic experience that she would have to deal with for the rest of her life. She was fortunate enough to have survived the ordeal, but the emotional scars left by the event would be a constant reminder of what she had endured. In the aftermath of her escape, Pimentel was hospitalized for the injuries she sustained during her kidnapping. She had a concussion, bruises all over her body, and was emotionally drained. Although she was physically healing, the mental trauma would take a long time to recover from. Pimentel described the feeling of being held against her will by Nellsch as a nightmare that she couldn't wake up from. The constant fear of being raped or killed at any moment was something that stayed with her long after her escape. She was unable to sleep for days, constantly replaying the events in her head and wondering what could have happened if she didn't manage to escape. To deal with the trauma, Pimentel sought therapy and support from her family and friends. She would often break down in tears at the thought of what had happened, but with the help of her loved ones, she was able to start rebuilding her life. In the end, Pimentel's courage in escaping from Nellsch's grasp and coming forward about her ordeal would serve as an inspiration to others who had gone through similar experiences. She had shown that even in the face of adversity, it was possible to overcome the trauma and move forward.